Hi there, and welcome to Ian's Engage channel. I'm Ian. In a previous video, I showed how I tested all of my locos running through a curved Setrack point. I'd like to thank everyone who provided advice and constructive comments on that video, as I found the feedback to be most helpful. Just for the record, the point I'm testing is a brand new curved Setrack Insulfrog point. The adjacent track to the point has been fitted with new fish plates, and all track was cleaned using an electrical contact cleaner prior to testing. I've since checked that all of the loco wheel sets were clean, and that the pickups were making contact with the wheels. The temperamental class 08 obviously being the odd one out. This meant that the point was being tested under the best conditions I could provide. In this video I'm going to show how I tested the point using a wide variety of rolling stock, to complete my analysis of the suitability of the point for Shelfington. So, the plan was to use different rakes of wagons, pushing them and pulling them through both lanes of the point in both directions and note any problems. Based on the results, I could then finally make a decision whether or not to include the curved Setrack point on Shelfington. I decided to use my trusty Dapple Class 33 to haul the rakes of wagons for each test run, and that each rake of wagons would contain a Graham Farish brake van fitted with metal wheels. So, let the next stage of experimentation begin. First on test was a rake of mineral wagons from Pico and Graham Farish. The majority of the wagons were from Pico and were fitted with plastic wheels, so it would be interesting to see how they handled the large plastic frogs of the point. I intended to use these wagons in the Ledgetown quarry area quite extensively, so it was important that they were able to cross at least the outside lane of the point successfully. I needn't have worried, as the rake of wagons had no issues crossing the point in either lane in either direction, whether being pushed or pulled. Next on test were a rake of Pico ferry wagons. You may remember that these had caused no end of problems when being pushed across a series of straight Setrack points. Even after upgrading them to metal wheels and adding weight, the problems had persisted and had led me to make the decision to only use straight streamline points on the layout. How would they cope with the curved Setrack point though? Well, as you can see here, they handle the point with ease, without any extra weight and even at speed. Next up were a rake of Revolution Trains, Graham Farish and Pico tank wagons, all running on metal wheels bar the single Pico wagon. Now yes, I know I may have mentioned that I was going to have only one tank wagon, as a depot refuelling wagon if I remember, but a premium bond win and a birthday coincided to help me cobble a nice rake together. It may not be a prototypical collection, but I quite like them. Anyway, the test showed that all of the wagons could successfully traverse the point, being pulled or pushed through either lane at a variety of speeds. Next on test were a short rake of Rapido Trains and Graham Farish conflat wagons, all running on metal wheels. I really like the look of the Rapido Trains conflat wagons that I picked up at the Great Electric Train Show for a really good price. This was the first time that they'd been run on the test track, and I wasn't particularly happy with how they seemed to jump and jerk around as they went around the track. After some investigation, I found that the wheels were a little tight, and was dismayed to find that they couldn't easily be removed from their axle boxes due to the way they'd been incorporated into the chassis. You can see the beam here that is preventing them from being removed as normal. In my eyes, this was a terrible design, and another case of underside detail being added to a model that wasn't required, and in this case making maintenance very difficult. To remedy the issue, I tried to ease the axles by pulling the frame of the chassis apart slightly. This seemed to do the trick, and on subsequent runs the wagons ran much better. However, I didn't expect the fix to last long. The good news was that at least the rake stayed on the track as it crossed over the point, despite the problematic wheel sets. A rake of Dapple Dogfish wagons were next on test, all running metal wheel sets. Now these are some of my favourite wagons, and I was very keen that they should have some successful runs. I put them through their paces through each lane at various speeds, both being pulled and pushed. And it was rather pleasing that the wagons navigated the point successfully on each occasion. Next on test were a rake of Pico and Graham Parish box vans, some with metal wheels but the majority sporting plastic wheels. At the last minute I also added the Engage Society's excellent ferry van to the rake. With testing going well, I was incredibly surprised when I heard the sound of derailing wagons. I wasn't expecting that, I have to admit. So what had come off? What had come off was the ferry van, which was even more surprising. I tried the ferry van with the brake van and pushed them through the inner lane and all went well, despite a bit of a jump from the van. I then tried pushing the combination through the outside lane a few times. The van derailed on every attempt. I even tried pushing the van on its own. Oh dear. Enough said about that. Okay, so back to the box vans. How would they perform now that they were free of the disruptive ferry van? Well, the good news was that the box vans behaved themselves impeccably and crossed the point perfectly every time. For the next test, having just had a failure pushing a ferry van, I decided to go with something of a similar size, with a combination of Dapple, Graham Farish and Lima CCT vans, all sporting metal wheels. Would they suffer the same fate as the ferry van? Well, as it turns out, they had no problem at all. This was a little surprising, considering what had just happened with the ferry van, but I wasn't complaining. Next up was even longer rolling stock, and a rake of Graham Farish parcel and newspaper vans, each running with metal wheel sets. These vans had independent bogies, so I wasn't expecting them to run into trouble. And indeed, they encountered no problems at all as they traversed the point in various directions and speeds. A rake of Graham Farish Mark I coaches were on test next, with all coaches running on metal wheels. As the parcel and newspaper vans had passed their test and the Mark I coaches were of a similar design, I didn't expect any problems to occur. And they didn't, with all coaches remaining on track whichever direction or speed I chose to run them at. Next up were the longest stock on test, consisting of a rake of Dapple Mark III coaches, all shod with metal wheels. I ran the coaches with the Class 43, which seemed fitting. As you can see, they didn't mind the curved point at all. I was really quite impressed by the crossings at top speed, as the whole train was being pushed by the motor car at this point. For completeness, I also ran the Class 101 with its dummy car attached. I suppose that the dummy car is rolling stock after all. Anyway, the combination didn't encounter any problems crossing the point. So, that was the majority of my current rolling stock being pushed, pulled, hauled and shunted across the point, and as you saw, everything went rather well. Well, apart from when pushing the N-Gauge Society's ferry van. As you'll have seen in the video, there was the odd jump as wheels navigated the point work, but nothing jammed and nothing other than the ferry van derailed. As well as whether or not my locos and stock could navigate the point, I was also taking into account where the point would be located on the layout, with the inner lane being the exit from Mantlethorpe Station and the outer lane being a route to and from behind the scenic breakboard. To that end, rolling stock would rarely, if ever, be pushed over the point, so the failure of the N-Gauge Society's ferry van, while surprising, wasn't too much of a concern for me. However, I would expect locos to be able to crawl over the point, because that's what they'd do as they left the station, or the sidings behind the scenic breakboard. This was a problem for some of my locos, as seen in the previous video. So, after thinking long and hard, I've decided that a curved Setrack point will not be featuring in the Shelfington track design. With that decision made, a track redesign would be required to work out how to exit Mantlethorpe Station, which had now all of a sudden become a terminus. I'd already had some initial thoughts on that, as you can see from the layout design on screen now, but I'd delve into that further in a future video. Not including a curved Setrack point also left the door open for me to use code 55 track. Okay, so that's about it for this update. For those who are still watching, I hope you found the testing interesting and have come to the same conclusion as myself. If you haven't, then please let me know why. Alternatively, if you've got any hints, tips, useful tools or techniques to pass on to a beginner in engaged modelling, or if you simply want to say hello, then please do so in the comment section. Anything and everything you've got to say will be greatly appreciated. In the meantime, thanks ever so much for watching. Hopefully I'll have another update on my progress soon. Bye.